Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Hleng Fatebe. I'm a renewable energy technical advisor at C40 Cities. Thank you again for joining us today as we continue with part 2 of our conversations in energy. Today's session, which is a follow-up from the a webinar we did 2 weeks, or I believe 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. In the first session, we discussed critical issues plaguing the electricity sector in South Africa. We explored the root causes, assess the impact on the consumers and the economy, and explore some of the possible solutions. So today's session is a follow-up from that discussion, and today we are discussing powering the future, structural reform and long-term financial sustainability in South Africa's electricity sector. We have an amazing panel today, which I'm excited to facilitate the discussion. And today they will discuss structural issues, policy frameworks, and investment strategies needed to stabilize the industry and drive sustainable growth in the electricity supply industry. So thank you again for joining us. Please do feel free. Our panelists will be sharing some presentations. Some will share PowerPoint, some will speak. But please do feel free to share your questions in the Q&A in the chat, and will ensure that our speakers are able to respond to them as well. At the end of the webinar today, we'll have a survey for you, and we'll appreciate your responses, but we'll let you know towards the end when the survey is ready. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Today we have Nomfundo Masetti from NERSA joining us. We have Mvumikazi Vimbani from Department of Energy and Electricity. Yes, I'm saying that correctly officially as of today. And we also have Rola Iglesi from University of Pretoria. These will be our panelists today. So before we start, just to say, we'll start with Nomfundo from NERSA. Nomfundo serves as the full-time regulator and board member of the National Regulator of South Africa for 11 years. She is primarily responsible for regulation of the gas industry and has recently been assigned in an acting capacity to the position of regulator member in charge of the electricity regulation portfolio. She also participates in other key strategic subcommittees of the energy regulator, including Petroleum Pipelines Regulation Subcommittee, where she serves as the chairperson between the period of 2017 until March 2020, and other governance structures of the energy sector. I'll stop here and allow Nomfundo to come in. Good morning, Nomfundo. Is Nomfundo online?
I don't see her online, Shandy.
Okay. All right, no problem. Apologies about that. While Nomfundo tries to rejoin, I'll move on to our next speaker, and she'll come in, and then once Nomfundo comes in, she'll follow after our second speaker. So I present to you Mvumikazi Vimbani. We call her Mvumi. Mvumikazi is experienced in energy policy and engineering, which was is experience in energy policy and engineering, which was acquired in policy development, electricity distribution, and maritime. She has an electrical engineering background and has obtained a master's qualification where she majored in energy policy and engineering. Vimbani is registered with Engineering Council of South Africa and holds a women's license. Her technical knowledge and policy insight are a good combination of sustainable and efficient energy landscape. As I said, Mvumi is from Department of Energy and Electricity. Good morning, Mvumi, over to you.
Thank you, Hlengiwe, for that beautiful introduction, and greetings to the webinar attendees. Could you please, Hlengiwe, confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes. You put it on presenter mode. Yes, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hlengiwe. My name once again is Mvumikazi, and yes, as of today, I'm part of the officials from the Department of Electricity and Energy. So I'll be speaking to us about the role of the Integrated Resource Plan in shaping the energy sector. So we'll first highlight the policy landscape which influenced each of the IRPs over the years. Then we'll look at the role of each IRP in shaping the sector. We'll just have a small summary, and then we'll look at some key takeaways regarding the role of the IRP in the sector. So come with me down memory lane. It all starts in 1998. So for the period of 1998 till 2004, we had the white paper, we still have it though, as on energy policy 1998. So what this white paper did, it encouraged private sector participation in electricity generation. It also advocates for the integrated resource planning to be the methodology to be adopted to inform electricity generation infrastructure investments. Also, it promoted the incorporation of renewable energy technology and alternative energy technologies. And this period gave us 3 resource plans. We had the Integrated Strategic Electricity Plan, as well as the National Electricity Resource Plan 1, which was developed. So the ISEP, Integrated Strategy Electricity Plan, was developed by Eskom. Then the National Integrated Resource Plans 1 and 2 were developed by NERSA. Then in the second period of 2005, from 2005, we see that there was Electricity Regulation Act, which was developed in response to the white paper objectives, and it defined an integrated resource plan as a resource plan established by the national sphere of government to give effect to national policy, thus transferring now the development responsibility from NERSA to national government. It then introduced ministerial determinations as an instrument to procure new generation capacity. It also made provision for the minister to make regulations on new generation capacity. The minister then exercised her powers in 2011 and gazetted the electricity regulations on new generation capacity. And these regulations, they provide a framework on the ministerial determinations as well as the IPP procurement program we are very much acquainted with. And it also included cross-border projects. So this period gave us also 2 resource plans, the Integrated Resource Plan 1, which was developed by the department, as well as the Integrated Resource Plan 2010, which is mostly known. So the ISEP, NIRP 1, 2, and the IRP 1 are the lesser known IRPs. Then going to the next time period, we saw that the amendment, the electricity regulations on new generation capacity were amended in 2016. It was just minor amendments, like just changing some definitions, having the deletion here and there, and adding something here and there. But also during this period, in 2017, the licensing exemption and registration notice, it amended Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act. And this amendment, it allowed generation facilities of up to 1 megawatt to be exempt from licensing, and that power was going to be for own use or related companies. And this time period gave us 2 resource plans, the Integrated Resource Plan 2013, which is lesser known compared to its counterpart, the Integrated Resource Plan 2019. And these resource plans were also developed by the department. And then in the time horizon from 2020, we have the amendment to the electricity regulations on new generation capacity in 2020, and this enabled organs of state that are active in the energy sector to either buy from IPPs, have their own build, or have public-private partnerships. But also, the licensing exemption and registration notice of 2021 amended the one of 2017, increasing the licensing exemption threshold from 1 megawatt to 100 megawatts, and added also that now this capacity generation power, the power generated from these generation facilities could be either for own use or to one or more customers. Just over a year later, the licensing exemption and registration notice 2023 then removed the licensing threshold completely, meaning that generation facilities, regardless of capacity, were exempt from having a license, but required also to register with the regulator. This was for own use for one or more customers. And what this did was to establish a sort of a bilateral contracting market in South Africa. Fast forward to the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act of 2024, it then amended the definition of an IRP to now an indicative and forward-looking plan for electricity generation, which reflects national policy on electricity planning. And it goes on that it will give us the technologies as well as the capacity from each technology. But then also the ministerial determination also changed slightly, because in 2006, from 2006, ministerial determinations were only for generation capacity, but now this Amendment Act also added transmission projects as well as part of determinations to be issued by the minister. And this period has given us two drafts of the IRP, the draft IRP 2023, as well as the draft IRP 2024, also developed by the department. Now, looking at now the role of each IRP and how it impacted the sector. For the ISEP, the NIRP1 and the NIRP2, the ISEP was basically followed the traditional electricity planning approach, which did not really consider least costs and did not consider stakeholder engagement. And the energy mix was fossil fuel dominated. For the NIRP1 and the NIRP2, there was very much minimal impact, as it was overshadowed by the ISEP at the time. For the next two IRPs, the IRP1, it was more sort of in determination format. It provided an intervention in terms of having 1 million solar water geysers to be installed throughout all over the country. It incentivized energy efficiency. And in terms of the energy mix, it aimed at introducing about 4% of renewable energy. And it said that in terms of stakeholder engagement, this will be dealt with in the next IRP, which they thought would be IRP2, which then became IRP 2010. The IRP 2010 was a very comprehensive plan as compared to the IRP1, because the IRP1 was just a one-pager and the IRP 2010 is a lot of pages. And it gave us a comprehensive energy mix as well. It changed the energy mix to being fossil fuel dominated to introducing renewable energy, reflecting government policy in climate change commitments. We will be reminded that from the previous slide, we did indicate that the IRP definition from 2006 was that the IRP should reflect national policy. And this was done through a policy adjustment. And hence we have the policy adjusted IRP 2010. Also, this IRP established the IPP market in South Africa as well as a single buyer model, and also invited for stakeholder engagements in policy making, or rather electricity planning. The IRP 2013, it was just a review of the IRP 2010 by just changing some of the assumptions or updating some of the assumptions that had changed during that time. And it did not make much of a difference. And it's also one of the lesser known IRPs. The IRP 2019, however, increased the technology options from clean energy or renewable energy, and it incorporated regional development, the Grand Inga hydro projects, as the new gen regs had indicated that there was a possibility for incorporating cross-border projects in our planning. It also allocated capacity of distributed generation of up to 500 megawatts per annum, reflecting the licensing exemption notice of 2017, where there was a cap of 1 megawatts. And it also included energy storage as part of the energy mix. Then fast forward to the draft IRP 2023. This one was gazetted in January 2024, that is last year, with the objective on consulting the public on the assumptions that have been used as well as the scenarios and pathways that were developed. And for the first time, the IRP incorporated private projects and considered grid constraints. This IRP, it introduced a two-horizon approach. Horizon 1, which was a period up to 2030, was looking at what was the capacity shortfall at the time and tested scenarios on how to meet the demand. For Horizon 2, it was just exploratory pathways that were put out there to test certain mixes against policy objectives, which are energy security, environmental consideration, as well as least cost to the economy. The draft IRP 2024, it even then incorporated more private projects. But before I go to that, this draft IRP 2024 was the outcome of the consultation period of the draft IRP 2023. So the public comments were received by the department, they were gone through, and in consideration of those public comments resulted updated assumptions, new scenarios, etc., resulting from the public consultation period. And then this came out as a draft IRP 2024. And in so doing, it incorporated more private projects up to 13 gigawatts. But what this showed us in terms of the Horizon 1 of this draft IRP 2024 was that the system was adequate up until 2030 with just the projects in the pipeline from both the public and private sectors. And then this means that there's now shared responsibility between the public and private sectors in ensuring that the capacity does come online, or we're going to have a problem. Also, the simulation was based on a multinodal approach to optimize both now generation and transmission. And it also studied like energy storage, if there would be more aggressive on energy storage, what would the energy mix look like? So to summarize, ladies and gentlemen, the integrated resource planning did indeed facilitate private sector participation in electricity generation from the public procurement. And also it is an instrument to communicate, it was an instrument used to communicate our international obligations to climate change, because we then considered renewable energy. But we have seen that it evolved to adapt the policy changes during the period in which it was developed. It also has a different approach now, considering the challenges that we have faced. And it is now an indicative plan for both public and private procurement. And it also stands to facilitate technology adoption as it did in 2010 and as it should in the future. In terms of key takeaways regarding their role in the sector, an IRP can be an instrument for private sector participation in electricity generation, as it has indeed increased private sector participation as per their white paper objectives. And also, there's now two types of procurement which do coexist. Integrated resource plans, they inform electricity generation as well as transmission infrastructure investments, because the transmission development plan is always based on the prevailing IRP of the time. And we see that there's been private project consideration in the IRP and the shared responsibility going forward between the public and private sectors. The grid consideration in the IRP is also something that we should be considered also going forward, and it is indicative for both the public and private procurement. The IRP can promote the incorporation of renewable energy as well as alternative technologies, as we have seen increasing renewable energy over the years, and we have seen scenarios on energy storage, SMRs, and incorporation of offshore wind in the draft IRP 2024 as part of the generation assumptions. In terms of the integrated resource plan going forward, it is now sitting at NEDLAC, where it is being deliberated upon by government, civil society, business, as well as labor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation and giving us a layout of our energy planning since 1998. And I think sometimes we forget how progressive our policies have been in South Africa in terms of ensuring climate considerations, as well as incorporating the private sector in the play. Although we're only now starting to see that there's going to be more participation from the private sector. So thank you so much for that presentation. Just a quick question is, after NEDLAC, what happens post NEDLAC discussions? Yeah.
Post NEDLAC discussions, the document then goes to intergovernmental consultations, what we call the economic cluster consultations. So governments, departments are grouped into clusters, and all the clusters that have whose policies impact each other are grouped together, and the DEE forms part of the economic cluster. And there it will be deliberated upon by senior officials, as well as the DGs of those governments, which then will be passed now to the ministerial cluster. So the ministers will carry on that conversation, and post that it will be taken now to cabinet, where cabinet will deliberate upon it, and then if there's any changes that they would like to make, they will suggest those changes and they will be considered. And this is also happening in the cluster level as well. And then it is then approved for gazette or promulgation. Thank you, thanks.
Thank you. So there won't be any more broader stakeholder engagement in terms of going back to the public for comments?
I doubt so, because the NEDLAC cluster is usually the final, the NEDLAC consultations is usually the final consultation. So the organizations or stakeholders that fall under labor or civil society or business are still at will to be able to send their comments through and discussions to be represented now at that level.
All right. Thank you for me. There is a question, there's a comment or question from David. If colleagues, if you do have any questions, please do raise your hand or put it on the chat, and I'll address them to me. David says, it is notable that to date, the grade level IPP programs have only been successful when the state provides a sovereign guarantees. So is that something we think is going to continue going forward with the state providing sovereign guarantees?
We have seen the state providing state guarantees at 100% right up until bid window 6. For bid window 7, we have seen a reduction in the state guarantees of down to 80%. And the National Treasury did indicate or communicate that it is intending to reduce this. But on the contrary, we have also seen in terms of some of the initiatives that have been done by the industry in collaboration, Sapvia, to be specific, in collaboration with the Grid Access Unit in NTCSA, we've seen that there has been a lot of interest in terms of capacity for renewable energy projects, even in the absence of government guarantees. And these are like private to private projects. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's the role of policy and government, isn't it? Is that in the beginning stages, you provide that support, and after a while, the market takes it up and is able to continue without that level of support. So hopefully, even with the reduced support, hopefully it will continue as well. The growth of renewables and IPP will continue going forward. There's another question asking, please provide an update on the IEP process and issue.
Unfortunately, I'm not privy to such information. Thank you. I'm only with the IRPs.
All right. No, noted. Thanks. I don't see any more questions, but colleagues, please do share. Vumi is still with us. She'll stay with us. So we'll have a discussion afterwards as well. So please do prepare, think about your questions and share them on the Q&A or raise your hands. For now, Vumi, thank you. I will bring you back again for some Q&A later on. I will then move to our next speaker. We have Professor Rula Inglesi-Lotz, a member of the Department of Economics at the University of Pretoria. She's a distinguished scholar in the field. She earned her MCom in economics and completed her PhD studies in 2011 at UP. She also serves as the head of Energy Economics Research Unit at the University of Pretoria. Her research addresses challenges related to economic impact and consequences of energy consumption and generation methods, with a prolific publication record of over 100 academic papers in reputable international journals, alongside contributions to books, reports. Professor Inglesi-Lotz is recognized for her expertise in energy and environmental issues. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us today. And I'll hand over to you, and Prof will be discussing the economic impact of the reforms in the energy sector. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. It was actually very nice to hear from the previous speaker on this. Like Kengiwe said, we have come a long way, right? So I'm gonna start. Let's see if I can share my presentation quickly. You can see my slides, just indicate that everything is fine. Can you see the slides? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Therefore, I can start. So good morning, everyone, more formally now, and thank you for the invitation to speak today in this panel discussion. It's always an honor to contribute to this crucial debates and discussions we have on South Africa's energy, present and future. And it's always an honor for me to bring the economic standpoint. So for those that don't know me, I think the introduction said a lot. I'm Rula Inglesi-Lotz. I'm a professor at the Department of Economics at the University of Pretoria. I'm the head of the Energy Economics Research Unit. And our focus at the unit is on understanding the economic forces that shape the energy markets and the policies we have. And what's the impact of these policies? We analyze issues such as energy pricing, such as investment frameworks, socioeconomic impacts of the policy instruments implementation. And also we do quite a lot of modeling to help design pathways towards an efficient, just, and sustainable energy transition. So our work highlights that energy is not just a technical or engineering challenge, it is fundamentally an economic one as well, influencing everything from, we've all heard that, from employment to industrial productivity, but also the social equity, income inequalities, etc. So this morning, I want to frame the conversation, what I'm going to talk about, around 3 key economic principles that, in my view, should guide South Africa's journey towards a financially sustainable energy sector. And I'm going to bring, while I talk through them, examples from other countries as well. So first one, cost-reflective pricing and the role of incentives. Second, investment in resilience and economic diversification, that's high in the agenda of many of the discussions recently. And third, the political economy of the just energy transition. Each of these concepts ties into, like I said, global relations and South Africa's unique challenges. And together, the 3 of them, they can form the foundation for an energy system that is both financially viable and socially inclusive, which is quite important for a country like ours. So let's start with the first one, cost-reflective pricing and the role of incentives. Energy markets are driven by price signals. In South Africa, however, we all know the pricing system is caught in a tension between affordability and financial sustainability for the utility as well. Eskom's tariff structures have historically depended on a system of cross-subsidization, where industrial and commercial consumers are charged higher rates to help offset the cost of electricity for low and lower income households. While this model has social benefits in terms of affordability and of course of accessibility, which is equally important, it has become increasingly unsustainable, especially as industrial users explore self-generation and alternative energy sources to kind of mitigate these rising costs and also the supply uncertainties. At the same time, another very important stakeholder in this discussion, the municipalities, they have long relied on electricity sales as a primary revenue stream. And they are currently facing increasing financial distress due to widespread non-payment on the one side, and on the other side, a shrinking customer base as more customers and consumers turn to decentralized energy solutions out of the grid. This challenge is further compounded by subsidized electricity prices that, while politically sensitive, often do not reflect the true costs associated with power generation, topped with grid maintenance and infrastructure expansion. This misalignment might be coming from a good perspective or a good intention, creates a disincentive for much needed investment in the sector, resulting in supply constraints. We've all experienced that and we all know about that, and resulting in limiting the ability to develop a financially viable energy system. So what does the financially stable energy sector require? We require an efficient tariff design and demand-side management strategy. So countries like Chile, if we look at Latin America, have successfully restructured the electricity tariff systems to strike a balance between affordability and investment incentives, showing that it is possible to recover costs while still ensuring equitable access to energy. So instead of relying only on indirect cross-subsidization, with the results on financial burdens on consumer segments, specific consumer segments, the approach they used utilizes direct subsidies targeted at vulnerable households, sort of like our free basic electricity system here, which, if I'm not mistaken, is under review at the moment. South Africa can draw valuable lessons from such models. Remember, not adopting copy-paste from other countries, but learning from how they develop the pricing mechanisms, to ensure the financial viability of the power sector, but also at the same time, remember we're doing work on socioeconomic impact, promote social equity in a sustainable manner. So beyond just pricing, incentives play a role, a well-designed tariff structure can be used to actively encourage energy efficiency, demand response, maybe greater participation in the energy market, and self-generation, grid feedback mechanisms, feed-in tariffs, etc., can also help towards this direction. Going to the next point I would like to make today, investment in resilience and economic diversification. South Africa's economy remains highly vulnerable to energy supply risks, stemming not only from the utilities' financial instability, but also from disruption in coal supply chains, global power dynamics, etc., and geopolitics. The transition to renewable energy can offer more than just environmental benefits, although sometimes we forget that on the way forward. This transition presents an opportunity, a strategic opportunity, to diversify the economy, to stimulate industrial development, and to create new employment opportunities. So by leveraging this shift, the country can reduce its dependence on, we all know, an aging centralized power system and foster a more dynamic energy sector that we should actually be more proud of ourselves with regards to innovation and research and development in this sector locally. So resilience can be built through investment in diversified energy sources, through regional integration, and through industrial policy alignment. So let me go through these three. What do I mean? Diversified energy mix. Countries such as India and Brazil have strategically scaled renewable energy while maintaining a mix that balances baseload stability with grid flexibility. Here we should ensure that policy mechanisms, capacity markets, energy storage incentives are in place to support this balance between the two. Remember, when we speak about transition, it's not a full coal to non-coal. We're talking about optimal energy mixes. And the speed towards the optimal energy mixes. Regional integration, what do I mean about that? The country can play an even more important role in the Southern African power pool. We can better enable or aim at enable utilization, more efficient utilization of regional energy sources and resources, while creating new economic opportunities. So start looking at the ability we have to trade across borders when it comes to resources, but also pure electricity. All of this play a role in this bigger ecosystem of the energy sector. Finally, green industrialization. I'm sure the majority of the people that are on this call today are aware of this discussion of whether, in simple terms, we should import. Let me say it very simplistically. Should we import solar or should we manufacture solar panels? So the transition cannot be unlinked, disaligned, unaligned with the industrial policy in the country. That means local supply chains and manufacturing sectors can benefit and can play a crucial role in this transition. And then we discuss about financial viability and economic development in the country. So long-term financial sustainability depends on ensuring that energy investments create broader economic value, supporting industrial development, job creation, and export opportunities. We go to the third point. Coal-dependent regions in South Africa have long relied on mining jobs and the broader economic activity, and I'm talking about Mpumalanga, right? The broader economic activity generated by the coal industry sustained these regions. A failure to take care of this integration and leaving these communities, well, a failure to take care of all of this and acknowledge all of this can leave these communities economically stranded. It can increase unemployment. It can increase regional inequalities. Whether we look at fast scenarios, low scenarios, I'm talking about the commissioning, the regional inequalities that we will face we need to start taking, and by we, I mean policymakers, researchers, stakeholders, that should be incorporated even as negative externality, negative outcome of this energy transition. I spoke a little bit earlier about the municipalities that have historically depended on electricity sales as a primary revenue, but the municipalities are also slowly but surely are adapting to a changing energy landscape. I know a few municipalities, especially in the Gauteng area, where I have networks, they try to develop alternative revenue models that do not rely on the increasingly uncertain electricity demand. So a just energy transition should focus on careful market design, institutional coordination, and economic restructuring. And let me unpack a little bit that. We need to manage transition risks. Countries like Germany have implemented structural support programs for coal-dependent regions, combining retraining programs, infrastructure investment, and economic incentives to attract new industries. So South Africa has the potential to adopt a similar approach, ensuring that energy workers are part of the transition rather than the casualties of it. Next, aligning policies across levels of government, and I think that's quite important to mention. Energy policy, municipal finance, labor policy, industrial policy, environmental policy, climate change strategies, all of these must be aligned. Currently, the country policy framework faces, let me use the word fragmentation, different departments. Yes, there is an effort and there is a progress through the years, but still there are stakeholders that operate in silos. So we need to start looking at more concerted efforts in our policy sphere. Creating clear investment pathways. The private sector indeed plays a critical role, but policy signals must be stable and clear. So the REAP program, for example, demonstrated that with the right frameworks, private investment flows in, but inconsistent policy implementation has the potential to stall momentum on these things. So just to close, where do we go from here? So South Africa's road to financial sustainability in the energy sector is not just about fixing Eskom or reforming tariffs or relooking at municipal revenues. It's about rethinking the economic architecture of the whole energy system. So cost-reflective pricing that will help us ensure financial viability while incentivizing efficiency and investment. Resilience and economic diversification has the potential to safeguard us against energy shocks, global energy shocks and geopolitical shocks, and create long-term economic opportunities. Finally, a just energy transition ensures, remember the word just, that the shift to clean energy should be equitable, but we should also consider that it should be politically feasible, otherwise it won't be sustainable. So just to close, to iterate that in our research unit, we believe that energy transitions are also economic transitions. And if we approach the challenge multidisciplinary way, but with clear economic principles, we can create a system that is not only financially stable, which is important currently, but also supports South Africa's broader developmental goals. Thank you for that, and looking forward to the rest of the discussion and the perspectives of the audience and the fellow panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was great. I like the comment, your concluding comment around the energy transition is also an economic transition. I think we sometimes forget about that, and it touches some. And I think because often when we talk about the energy transition, we say, oh, what about the jobs and people's livelihoods? And that really is touched. It comes. That's where the economy comes in. So thank you for bringing that and highlighting some of the key key solutions that we could then look at. Thank you, Sibonakali. So they have shared some questions there. So I'll read them out to you. I had a few questions around, you shared the Chile case study around direct subsidies for low-income households. I just wondered how do you implement that to and ensure that because we see, for example, we have the FBE policy, yet not everyone is receiving it. So how, with the Chile case study, how do you ensure that the right people receive it and it's implemented well?
I'm gonna let me start first with each country's municipal structure with regards to revenues, but also with regards to the importance in the governance of the structure. Each country's municipal structure is different. So that's why I think I made the note while I was talking that there are no policies overseas in other countries that we should take as South Africans and say, this is how it worked. Let me use it exactly here, and it will work. This is a way to road to failure, right? Yeah. So, and then I'm going to say an anecdote to understand how the mindset of the Chilean governance at the time was. Yeah. So in 2008, 18, sorry, 18. We had invited here ex-minister of Chile, Prof. Ricardo Raineri. He was at the time the president of the International Association for Energy Economics, and he helped us establish the South African Association for Energy Economics. So he was here, he gave a couple of talks, and in one of them, the audiences were coming from some of the municipalities. So one of the, so his argument was the municipalities should not be distributors of electricity. They should not be involved in the distribution of electricity. And some of our municipal colleagues raised the question, but it's in our mandate, right? We say that we need to provide to our citizens electricity. And he came and he said, check very carefully on how your bylaws and your laws are working, because it says you need to ensure your citizens have electricity. That doesn't make you a distributor, that makes you a facilitator of the market. So all of these discussions about municipal pricing, distribution, generation of electricity within the municipalities, if somebody looks at them from that mindset, that the municipalities have the role of the facilitator, the role of the overseer of the markets, even if they are included in this generation distribution, they also understand that the economic forces can be at place, and that's where the pricing comes in. Also this, I mentioned the free basic electricity. These are kind of policies that need to be updated often. And I think that's where the luxury of creating a new policy comes. We call it something else and we start from scratch. We haven't done any monitoring and evaluation, but it's a new policy. So we don't need to do any monitoring and evaluation. I think all of these pricing structures, especially the ones that affect households directly, need to be updated, relooked at, revised more often.
Thank you, Prof. Maybe let me go to the audiences before I look at my own questions. There's a question from Sibonakali, and the first one is, please comment on the capability of our municipalities in terms of being able to conduct cost of supply studies that ensure cost reflectivity. What is the impact? What is in the impact of this on the financial stability of the country's electricity supply industry?
So the question is dual. The one is on the capability of our municipalities in terms of being able to conduct cost of supply studies. Nothing in this sector happens in isolation. And we've said that many times, but the researchers in academia cannot do studies on their own. The researchers in municipalities cannot do studies on their own. The municipalities are working, I mean, in our department, we have the public policy hub. City of Tshwane and City of Johannesburg work with that hub, creating knowledge that can be used in the policy sphere. So I'm not saying the municipalities are not capable to conduct cost of supply studies. What I'm saying is, in this sector, we all work together. I mean, we did a study with UNDP and Presidential Climate Commission recently. We do studies with GIZ. We do studies for the Department of Energy and Electricity. Nothing works in isolation. So in that sense, I think it's crucial for our studies to be proactive and not only evaluating what has happened, but start thinking ahead, because that way we can be prepared. We as policymakers or researchers or economists, we can be prepared of the impacts that are coming ahead.
Thank you, Prof. And yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think particularly cost of supply studies, a lot of the municipalities also, because from the first webinar we did hear how municipalities are understaffed, and some of them don't have the capacity, and some of them don't even have this the skills. So they are most of them get support from external organizations such as universities and other organizations to help them conduct this cost of supply studies. Yeah, so I think at the moment, not many municipalities can do that on their own. They need all the support possible. And it's only now that they really more municipalities are starting to get more cost of supply studies as well. There was also a second question, what is the real impact on electricity pricing to consumers as more renewable energy technology and infrastructure is added to the South African energy mix?
So a couple of years ago, we did a study on the impact of renewable energy adoption on electricity price, on retail electricity price for European countries. And because at the time, the data here were a bit more, less available. And what we found in this study was that a couple of decades ago, because the study focused on a time period in the past, the higher the renewable adoption, the higher the electricity prices. Okay, but the interesting part of that is how we interpreted this result. This was the case when the renewable energy technologies were substantially more costly than less costly. Renewable energies were more costly than fossil fuel energies. So, of course, introducing an expensive technology in a system, the price will go up. Now we're talking 20 years down the line, 20 years of renewable energy technologies down the line. The cost is competitive of the two technologies. In some cases, and for some applications, it might even make more sense cost-wise to implement renewable energy technologies. Therefore, this impact of renewable energy adoption to electricity prices might turn. And I think that's something that goes back to economic principles of any technology adoption. In the beginning, the technologies that are not highly commercialized are very expensive. Therefore, they have the possibility to increase the prices. But as the technologies become more developed and less costly, that will take the prices down with them. So it will be interesting to see where we are at with regards to electricity pricing in South Africa. But also there are two answers into that. The one is the adoption of renewable energy into electricity generation that goes through the grid, and the renewable energy that is adopted by businesses and households individually, the embedded generation opportunities or the household uses of solar that are not going through the grid, and how is that affecting the price?
Thank you, Prof. Please do add Mpumi in on the screen so that colleagues can also direct their questions to Mpumi as well. Thank you, everyone, also for sharing your questions. And please do raise your hands or continue to share your questions in the Q&A and chat. Thank you, Prof. So there was you talked about green industrialization, and last week I saw that we now have the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan approved by Cabinet. I'm correct in saying that because I often don't know which one is the right word there. And I just wanted to ask you, Mpumi, will the SAREM impact the IRP? How do those two policies work together? Yeah.
Thanks. So one thing we can note that is in common on both the SAREM and the IRP is that they are both called living plans, which means that they're adapting with time as with things change. That's the first one. The SAREM was based actually on the IRP 2019, but also the SAREM says that for industrialization to happen effectively, you would need at least 3 gigawatts per annum of renewable energy for consistent industrialization. And from what we have seen from the draft IRP 2023 and 2024, we actually even exceed the 3 gigawatts that is required as a baseline for continuous SAREM industrialization. So yes, the one depends on the other. Both are living based on what changes on the other, but there are some things or criteria that need to be considered for one to continue. Yes, thanks.
Okay. So someone added there that we are quite good with our policies and our ambition. So it's good to hear that how there's more ambition there. But I'm not sure if you'll be able to respond to this, but how do we ensure that these are implemented and while they are living documents, we can actually track and monitor? Are there any plans that the department are putting forward to ensure that we actually do foresee 3 gigawatts and beyond being implemented annually going forward?
Since I am not part of the SAREM team, etc., but I am certain that with the amount of work that has been put into this document and the level of expertise industry-wide that has gone into putting up that, I'm sure they would not have missed such a very important and critical factor. Thanks.
Thank you. Prof, on your side, when I don't know if your organization had an opportunity to comment on the SAREM when it was up for public comments. What were your thoughts on that? And economically, looking at it, and what do you think of it, and how it can impact South Africa economy and green industrialization?
We didn't submit formally a comment. But I'm an economist at heart, so I'm going to answer with it depends on whose side you're seeing all of that, right? There's no strategy, there's no document, there's no policy, there's no technology that doesn't create winners and losers in its implementation, right? The question in all of these documents is how proactive is the policy on minimizing the costs of the implementation, right? I think in South Africa, I don't know where was the comment, we are very good in creating policies and very good policies. Now, the question we have is always the implementation, the appropriate implementation, the in-time implementation, and what this implementation gives a signal to investors. And I think that's quite important. Approving SAREM now, what does it say to the investors locally and internationally? That's the signal. And sometimes a perception, I see the impact of mismanagement and corruption is also asking one of the questions. The perception about what we should expect makes the expectation creates even more impact sometimes than the actual implementation of a policy.
Thank you so much. Before I just address the Q&A questions there, I just want to apologize to our audiences and everyone who joined today. Nofundo was not able to join us today, but she has some personal issues that she had to deal with. So I apologize everyone for that she's not able to join. And hopefully in the future we'll be able to have her join us in another webinar. But we'll continue with our two panelists who have been great in answering all of our questions so far. I don't know if we have addressed this question, but there was a question from David on, given the lack of secure electrical supply since 2007 has been a primary factor stopped economic growth in heavy industry. Will the new market model overcome this? I don't know if Rola, you want to take that, and then
I just want one comment that
yeah.
All our electricity demand models do not work without, and that might answer both questions there, without including some indicator of this before and after 2008. All our models, if you leave them without taking into consideration the big structural break of 2008. But at the same time, the big macro models we're discussing now, we had a lengthy discussion a few months ago of whether what we call the baseline, the business as usual scenarios, are the ones with power supply cuts or not, with power supply interruptions or not. So the impact of this supply, lack of secure electricity supply in the first years, 2008 to 2011 was probably, it was much bigger than the impact of a power cut now. The economic sectors have a way of adapting, that's the right word, adapting to new information and new conditions, but it takes time for them. So a new market model can overcome this? I don't know, because we're not comparing the economy of 2007 with the economy now, and the interdependencies and the linkages between sectors that we had then versus what we have now. The same with the question about corruption and mismanagement on cost-reflective pricing and economic growth. Our models, if you see the topics of what my master's and PhD students are doing at the moment, 90% of those that do work on electricity and energy markets in South Africa include institutional quality as one of the variables. And if that doesn't say any, I mean, it plays a role. It has played a role. And now we start seeing it in the numbers as well. Remember, I was saying about perception of corruption, but now we see it in the numbers as well.
Yeah, thank you. Any input from you, Mpumi, on those questions there?
I think she's answered it comprehensively. I can sit this one out.
All right, thank you so much. Let me check if I have missed another question. Again, colleagues, please do feel free to share any questions that you may have. Yes, there is a question from Chantel. She said, hi, I work in the affordable housing industry, and with the way the tariff structure is currently set up, the utility services is almost more than the utility services almost more than their rent. We are trying to approach COJ through JMOPA to discuss a tariff specifically for the inner city properties. This is also a way to revive the city and its residents. What is your view on this? Prof, what do you think on their suggestion?
You can start from me every time and then move me. Now, I'll say a sentence and then Mpumi can also add to that, or should add to that. I am against any tariff structure that is one for all. Tariff structure should not be one for all. They should be weighted in different factors, different conditions. And we do that through our different municipalities, right? There is a NERSA guideline, but different municipalities have different conditions to cater for. So my very, I don't know how to say, personal reaction into that is there should be different structures. What do I know about the specific condition? I don't know much. I don't know much about the specific City of Joburg situation. But my initial reaction is there should be different structures.
All right.
Rumi, you are not allowed to say Dito.
Women, do you have a comment? Mpumi?
I missed that, sorry.
No, I was asking if you have any comment around the question that was asked on the chat.
Or about the
Sorry,
prices being more than
I
the...
missed something. Pricing, yes, yes. Sorry, I'm trying to
or
get my
I
chat.
see.
Yes,
No,
yeah,
I don't have any comment, thanks.
okay. I'll bring in Karen. You have your hand up. Please come in.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. And thank you very much to both Mpumi and Rola, as usual. I think very interesting feedback and very interesting information shared. So I want to throw out a question, and maybe it's just a reflection from building on the question about, and I think the comments in the chat around how we have wonderful plans and we fail in implementation. And I mean, I think that's it's a big problem in South Africa. It's not a new problem. And neither is it, are we alone in this problem? I think it's a global issue. And, at some point in time, I think the focus on implementation versus planning needs to change. But, the one thing they say about the plan is if plan A doesn't work, don't worry. There's 25 other letters in the alphabet. And, we cannot continue to push the sector forward and achieve this economic transition as much as a sustainability, environmental, and technology transition if we don't actually peg down the things that we need to achieve. So we've seen, and I think somebody asked a question very early on about, government support, funding, guarantees, etc., that have been used to drive a very successful implementation of the renewable energy sector. But there's a lot of other things that are very critical to the sector that are failing and falling apart. And the one reflection I have is, and I just did a quick Google on my phone about how many plans do we have, how many strategies do we have, and we have a whole lot of them. And neither the IEP, well, we don't have an IEP, but neither one of them or none of them actually covers strategically what does South Africa want to achieve from the energy sector. And I was just wondering if you've had any thoughts about that. What are we actually, all of us, doing here, rather than implementing these little boxes that we each focusing on? What are we actually doing here to drive a collective goal that I think first and foremost delivers an economic transformation given the socio-economic situation we are in, and then obviously follows with the environmental and technology, etc. So just sorry, that was a long introduction, but maybe just to throw it out there, are we missing this one uniting goal? We run big companies and corporates with visions and missions and taglines and things like that. Are we missing this united goal that we're all driving to in the energy sector? Thanks.
I don't know if Mpumi, you want to come in from what Karen has said.
Well, in my opinion, perhaps what we are solving for is what would maybe be in the NDP in terms of this horizon, the period up to 2030. And then if the NDP perhaps says that we want to eradicate unemployment, for an example, then the expectation would be then every other policy should be working towards that eradication of unemployment. And each and every sector then would do what it should, align each of their policies as well as their legislative frameworks to work towards that. And in whatever manner that sector operates. So for example, if it's in the electricity sector, then you would be thinking, okay, fine, what can we do to make sure that there are more jobs? Are we going to increase private sector participation? Yes. What is our enabling policy saying about this? The white paper on energy policy says, yes, we need to increase more private sector participation so that there may be also more generators in the space for entrepreneurship purposes. And then there's now another policy that says, okay, fine, we need to have maybe more renewable or clean energy sources. And that policy then still speaks to the electricity sector as well as the NDP in terms of if there's more renewable energy power plants maybe that are being built, it means that there are more jobs. And then maybe there's another policy that says that perhaps if we could incentivize this industry instead, like for example, the SANREM will say that let us now industrialize. As much as it is speaking to renewable energy master plan, but if you're industrializing, you're also speaking to economic growth, but also you're answering that question of the National Development Plan that says that you want to eradicate unemployment by a certain date. Maybe perhaps we're a bit too late, but better late than never. Thanks.
Thanks for me. Yeah, as you say, better late than never, and also just recognizing and where we have fallen short and picking up from there and learning from there would be great. Yeah, thank you for me. Prof, any additions to that?
I share Kiran's. It's very seldomly that Kiran and I have opposing opinions about these things, but I echo here call for action. Actually, what are we all doing? It's where are we reaching the point of okay, we are this. The policy is not aligned. The policy is this, the policy is that, or there is an effort, but it's not truly aligned. But what are we doing? Except for just looking at it and saying, but yes, it's not aligned. It was in 2015, I was working on the energy efficiency strategy document, and it was a little bit of a shock to me that it wasn't located in the Department of Energy initially, and it was located in the Department of Science and Innovation. So, and only when you dig a little bit more and unpack it, you realize that it was more about technologies and our strategy on the energy efficiency technologies of the future, and less about the national governance and implementation of policies. And I have a student, she worked on that at her honors last year, and we want to expand it, that is trying to make a map of all of these policies. Because imagine how counterproductive it would be if we had policies that direct us one way, and then our policies that are from another entity that keep us a little bit back on that. We will never reach our targets if the speeds do not speak to each other. So it will be interesting to see what's the mapping of these policies and how do they fit with regards to the targets, but also the timelines. So not only the titles and where they belong, but also the targets and the timelines. So just to share with you, a few years ago also, I was in a conference and I was presenting about South Africa, and a very similar way of explaining the IRP, like Vumi did this earlier today. And then there were a few colleagues from Greece that came afterwards, and they said to me, "You're doing amazing things policy-wise in South Africa." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "No, you presented different IRPs for different years. Does this mean you update your IRP almost every second year?" I was like, no, we're not really updating it. It's not going through the processes, so it has another. Then they came to me and they said, no, but how about load shedding? It's an amazing policy. And I mean, how many times did we have webinars where the load shedding was not the amazing policy, but we discussed about the negative impacts of load shedding. But at the time, Europe saw in Europe, the specific group of academics doing energy economics saw the load shedding policy as a proactive way of dealing with energy security issues, which they were facing at the time because Russia just attacked Ukraine. And sometimes we have this, not sometimes, we have these policies and we try to change them. While we should be proud of what we have, just make sure that we align them better and that they talk to each other before we get in the face of non-reversible impacts, socioeconomic, technology impacts that we haven't anticipated.
Thank you, Prof. I think the comment around load shedding is an interesting one because it's often load shedding is it is bad. Let's not even think it is bad. It really affects us badly. But the ability how South Africa has been able to handle that and ensure that we never on total blackout is we should or at least upload them for that. Again, thank you, David, for sharing your questions. He has shared another question. Colleagues, if you do have questions, do share them on the chat or on the Q&A, and we'll have our panelists try address them. David has another question, and he says, if the USA and the European Union cannot be competitive with China's renewable energy manufacturing industry, why can SA, with our smaller market and industrial base, do it? I think he's touching on the SAREM as well there. What are your thoughts there? Mpumi, I'll start with you.
I'll say let's allow little David to go to the battlefield with the big Goliath. Maybe one of the 5 stones will do some magic there. Thanks. That's all I'll say.
Prof?
I love that. Very similar to what I had in mind. Although US is not a country that people want to discuss in public these days, because you can never say the right thing or the wrong thing. But I was in an interview a few weeks ago, and it was a very similar question asked on, but these countries are becoming super countries. How can we compete against super countries? And my response is regional integration. My response is, look, if you organize 10 Davids, not David Nichols, the David from the Bible, if you organize 10 of them together, you have the chance to be a super region and not a super country.
Yes.
Regional integration can reach us. Look at the resources that the African continent has. So yes, I agree. If you're saying EU is also not one country. So if we want to be very specific about it, there are many countries organized with many different political systems, many, let's call them buffers. So if Germany's economic conditions worsen, France might go up. So they buffer each other out. Well, and we compare that trade with only one country, it's also a bit unfair. So I don't know if we can do it now, but I think there is potential, if not only in South Africa, but in the broader region. And I really believe that with the resources that are sitting in the region at the moment, there is potential for good coordination and collaborative efforts that can take down super countries. But maybe I'm the optimist in a pink cloud when I speak about South Africa and the African continent. So, yeah.
No, I agree with you. I also am optimistic that if we got our houses in order as a region, as an Africa region, we could possibly create our own powerhouse. But of course, we have to ensure political stability, ensure the trade agreements are in place as well, and build the relationships between our countries and our regions. Within our countries to ensure that we can drive this green industrialization. So I think there is possibility, but it really depends on our governments and how they handle this and their relations as well going forward. So let's see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years as well. If we have any more questions, please do share them. Because we are missing one speaker. Will end at 10:30. So we'll give you back your 30 minutes. So thank you. We'll also have a survey that will be shared in the next minute or so. Please do respond to the survey as well. Just as we start to conclude, I wanted to just ask for your reflections around with the reforms that we are seeing, as well as the discussions around the just energy transition. Are there any, Prof, are you seeing any gaps that you were not addressing? And I know I think South Africa is quite big on skills for our miners, ensuring that our miners are not left destitute once we do the just energy transition. We are looking at the infrastructure policies as well to ensure that we upgrade our transmission lines and all of that. But are you seeing any gaps at the moment that you're worried about? And I think we really need to be looking at that as well to ensure a just energy transition.
So when we speak about skills and what skills are needed, I'm going to throw it back to Samia, because whenever I want to speak about skills, the skills in the energy sector in South Africa, I have Samia's skills. Now, I don't remember the title, but the work that was done in that document, not roadmap, it was skills. Kiran can help us. But what we lack, maybe when it comes to skills training, is not the actual, let's call it hard skills, but understanding of the broader energy dynamics. I would have loved to see miners that understand the full value chain and not only the specific work that they're doing. That yes, some of them we classify as unskilled, some of them we classify on specific parts of the value chain. Okay, energy skills roadmap. See, I remembered correctly. But that they understand the full value chain of their product. The same, and we refer now to the miners, but I think that's the same for all professions in the energy sector. I would like to have economists, and we try, that are trained in the economic specialization, but have a full understanding and perspective of the value chain that they're working on. Entrepreneurs, and I think that there are a lot of training programs at the moment that are running, some smaller, some once-off, but the entrepreneurs should understand the technology and the engineering behind the value chain that they are contributing to. So I'm tired of people, because now we spoke about skills, but I'm tired of people that classify themselves as energy specialists, because that tells me nothing. The energy specialist in what? In which item? But I also believe that government officials from departments need to have a specialization in the sector, but a broader understanding. And once somebody has the broader understanding of the energy sector, then they can also see how they can contribute to the different value chains of that sector. But that's we can have a whole discussion on that, on skills and the energy profession on its own.
All right. Okay, before I come to you, there is a question. So thank you for sharing your question there. It says, please share your insight as far as the procurement of transmission infrastructure according to the latest ministerial determination, especially that government is looking to procure services from independent transmission providers. Will this capacity of ITPs come from South Africa? Vumi, do you want to come through upon that question? Vumi? Still, yeah. Mute again.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'm unmuted now. Let me
Yes.
just check the question. According to especially, will this capacity of ITPs come from South Africa? In essence, the RFP out to the market, it's a global market. I suspect, just like with the IPP program, it's a global market. I hope that answers the question.
All right. Prof, do you have any inputs on that one? All right. Before I go to Karen, I did see your hand. I'll just give Vumi a chance to just have concluding remarks on today's session. On what your thoughts? How should the public receive the IRP and as well as the market? How should we respond to it going forward from someone who sits on the other side and being part of formulating the IRP? Yeah.
So as I have presented earlier on, we have seen that the development of the formulation of the IRP has evolved over time. And this is highly influenced by the policy landscape, but most importantly by our stakeholders, that is the public. And one of the things that separates the integrated resource planning methodology from traditional electricity planning methodology, one of the characteristics of that is stakeholder engagement. So any IRP that we have to date would not have been the way that it has been had it not been for the public participating fully in that. And every time a draft IRP is sent out for public comments or gazetted for public comments, it is so that the public may then engage the document and also assist us. So for an example, the draft IRP 2023 came out to request the public for inputs on the assumptions that have been made, as well as the scenarios that have been developed. And the public came through and they gave alternative assumptions, but also they gave the backing information and sources of those assumptions. And then we're able to compare the different assumptions that we have received. And then we have chosen the ones based on whatever criteria that has been put in place. But also some even then gave scenarios, and then others discredited scenarios that had been in the draft. And therefore you would see that they have not been repeated in IRP 2024. And what we saw with the draft IRP 2024 was the outcomes of the public process for the draft IRP 2023. So every comment that we receive is very valuable, number one, no matter how small, no matter how big, but But what helps us the most is for comments to also have some sort of source backing, because eventually if we choose something and we put it out there, those who did not give that information will say, based on what? And I can't say, it's based on Hlengiwe, but I can say that it's based on this source, even though I may not mention that this source that Hlengiwe provided. And then that helps us all. But essentially, just maybe whenever we go for public consultation, that is not a final plan, as we went out for with assumptions as well as scenarios. It is the prerogative now of the cabinet then to produce the final policy adjusted plan. And so that is what I can say, that thank you, South Africans, for the work that you do in helping us develop this plan together. And that is really appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mpumi. Karen, you had your hand up. Please do come in.
Hey, sorry, the host needed to unmute me. I was just wanted to say it was the Energy Skills Roadmap that Rola was referring to, that we produced. I think it was released in 2022. So I think it's still relevant, given that a lot of the findings that we have in the report haven't been fully addressed, and there's still a lot of scope for further work to be done, but also for greater implementation of some of the recommendations. Kodile then kindly provided the link to it on the chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Colleagues, please do again respond to the survey that has been shared on the chat. We'll really appreciate your responses. If my understanding is correct, my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we will share the presentations later on, as well as the recording soon after this webinar. So hopefully you'll be able to access what has been shared today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If there aren't any further questions, I don't want to keep everyone here. I know people have busy schedules as well. So thank you, and I want to extend my thanks to our panelists, our female panelists. By the way, I just want to say I'm very proud of that. Just to say that, you know, we do have females leading the space in the energy sector, which is amazing. So thank you, Prof. Thank you, Mpumi, for joining us today. You have shared really valuable insights to today's discussions. Really, one is that we must continue to engage with the IRP if we really want ambitious policies, and want policies that give signals to investors. Who must ourselves play an important part in the drafting of those policies. We can't point fingers and say no, but there is no implementation. So we need to ourselves be proactive in that area. But also, I think what Prof brought in is that in the drafting of the policies, and we talk about socioeconomics, and we talk about the wires and the technical issues, must never forget about the economics of it all and how it impacts everything. Without the economics, we will continue to fail going forward. So again, thank you, colleagues. I don't know if you have any last words, Prof and Mpumi, before we close out. But thank you for joining me today and sharing your insights. And thank you everyone who was able to join us for the past 1 hour and 30 minutes. It has been great in sharing your questions. We will have more events as Sanya, but you'll hear those through our social media as well as via email. So be on the lookout for that. But again, thank you and have a good day, everyone.